Okay.
Is it on? Is anybody online? Nobody is.
Maybe.
Sound check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay, Albert Strauss is on. T-Paul's on.
James, how's it? Can you just confirm if you can hear me?
Des.
I've tried to do this a bit earlier, but
There
yes.
we go.
Okay, cool.
Yay.
So,
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
alright, so today I'm going to talk about heat treatment. And it's probably the most important part of bladesmithing. Forging is fun, and it's lekker to chop iron and play all day. But if you don't harden it properly and temper it properly, so if you don't normalize it properly beforehand and get the blades cracking, it's no longer fun. You've wasted all that time and effort for nothing. Now I'm a bladesmith, and as you guys know, a bladesmith and a knife maker are two different things. Bladesmith, we work with plain carbon steels. We don't want chrome or anything above 2% maximum. So 5160 has 0.06% chrome in, which is acceptable if you don't want to show a nice hum on. But if you want to show a nice hum on, you want to work with a plain carbon steel like your 10 series steels, the 1070, 1085, 1095, file steels. Why we work with plain carbon steels is that plain carbon steels gives you the benefits of being able to differentially harden your blade. So differential hardening is very key because that gives you a very tough blade. The Japanese found this out and have perfected it by putting clay on the back of their blades. They put clay on the back, so that gives it a thermal blanket that heats it up to what is called critical nowadays. In the old days, you used to chase all the apprentices out the workshop because nobody was allowed to know that secret, that key secret temperature as to when the blade was hot enough to quench it, so that it would form martensite on the edge. So martensite is the key crystalline structure we are after with the plain carbon steel. Now we call these plain carbon steels austenitic steels because martensite in its heated up form is non-magnetic, and that's why you check it with a magnet to see if it has formed austenite. So austenite is the non-magnetic hot form of martensite. So you heat up your blade until it is non-magnetic. It is now austenitic. You're going to cool it down rapidly in a suitable high-speed quench oil. Buy yourself a suitable high-speed quench oil. Get one from Niels van den Berg. Get one from wherever. But please do yourself a favor and buy yourself a suitable high-speed quench oil. Not canola oil, that's for cooking.
Where do you get them besides?
So KMTS will have them, or Niels always has stock, but we can order them online in Cape Town. Stan Howski has. So you will find them. Just ask the knife makers and you will find yourself a decent high-speed quench oil. So guys, what we're looking for when you're working with your steel is to work with a steel with at least a carbon content of 0.5%. Up to just over 1%. That covers your spectrum of available blade steels, starting with 1055, which is what they use on the lasher tools. So if you want to make yourself a nice axe out of a hammerhead, and I think that's what we'll do next week, maybe an axe challenge. I'll show you how to make it a cool axe out of a hammerhead. It's 1055, which is basically 0.55 or 0.6% carbon. Your 5160s are 0.6%. Your 52-100s, which is a ball bearing steel, is a 1% carbon. So that's the zone you want to be in, because at 0.7%, which is a golden median, your steel is fully saturated with carbon. So I'm going to show you on this board quickly. You have to be a bit of a metallurgist to go bladesmithing, but you don't have to study for 5 years. So basically, steel in its resting state comprises of, so notice I said steel, not iron, because steel is iron ore with an alloy added. In plain carbon steels, it's carbon. Okay, in its resting state, we have ferrite, we have carbon, and carbon is tiny compared to your ferrite. And then we have something called pearlite. It's basically ferrite with a carbon molecule attached to it. Soft, little invader, hard, large grain. So when you heat that up at around 635 degrees, it unbundles into a small cubic structure that is fairly loose. So the carbon now has the ability to pass through those little bundles of ferrite, and then it becomes non-magnetic. So that's non-magnetic.
What's the degrees for that?
It's around 635, but we know that. So we know that with a magnet. So you're going to test it with a magnet.
Celsius.
That's Celsius, yes. So at 600, when it becomes martensite, it becomes non-magnetic, and you test it with a magnet to confirm that it's now in that structure and not this structure. Key now is to cool that structure down fast enough to retain that structure. So you cool it down fast enough, and what happens is that those ferrite granules trap the carbon, causes a lot of stress in that grain, and it makes it hard. So you have a very small grain compared to your larger grain structure of your ferrite called martensite. So martensite is the hardened form of hot austenite, which is non-magnetic. It goes back to magnetic. So it does not stay non-magnetic. As it cools down, it goes back to magnetic. But key is to try and retain that grain size. To cool it down fast enough, you need to have the right quenching oil. Alright, so
it's magnetic martensite.
So yeah, it's magnetic. It's called martensite. It's called austenite when it's non-magnetic. So that's austenite. So steel, carbon steel is austenitic. Turns into austenite, cools down, forms martensite. And that is the magic in a carbon steel blade. And that's why you can differentially harden. So you can heat up your blade, and your edge will form martensite, and your back will retain these structures. So you'll have this very fine grained, very hard cutting edge that's serviceable, and you have a larger grain back that is soft, that acts like a shock absorber, so it can take the impact if you're chopping or cutting. So ferrite, carbon, pearlite, heats up, gets austenitic, cool it down fast, becomes martensite. And that's the whole magic of forging. Okay, so yes, sequence. So let's get the sequence right. So I'm talking about hardening here, and that's after you have annealed. So if you want to work with an old file, for example, an old file comprises of 100% martensite. Okay, so a file is fully hardened. It's 100% martensite. You're going to heat it up, it's all red hot, and anneal it. So annealing is a different process. So you take that file, you put it into vermiculite, you can put it into ash or even cement. Heat it up, you let it cool down slowly, and what happens is this martensite unbundles again and reverts to that state. So you can't work with it at that fully hardened form. So number one is to anneal it. So after forging, it still has a grain. You've hammered it, so that grain is kind of all hammered out. You want to normalize it. And these are all part of heat treating. So annealing, normalizing. So annealing, before you do your forging, you want to make it as soft as possible and de-stress the steel. Number two is to normalize it. So that's after forging. You put the grain all out of kilter. So you want to de-stress the steel before you harden it. Otherwise you are going to get cracks on the edge. So normalizing, I'm doing 3 cycles. Now first cycle, I'll take it up to orange or forging temperature. Okay, so and then you take your blade out and you put it down, preferably on a bit of concrete or clay brick. Don't put it on your anvil, otherwise it's going to cool down and warp. So you're first going to take it up to orange in your first cycle of normalizing. Number 2 is just when it's turning orange. So let's go light orange, for want of a better word. And number 3 is on a reddish heat. And that's all done to manage the grain structure of the steel and to de-stress it. So you're managing the grain structure. I've run out of board here, but if you heat it up higher, it starts reverting back to a larger grain structure again. So there's a narrow band over here that you're working in. So you can't let it soak for too long, and that's why gas forge is really handy, because gas, you run it at an even temperature and it's easy to keep it in that zone. But if you're working with coal or charcoal, it's very difficult, because you really have to watch that temperature and shoot off that grid so quickly and become a larger grain and destabilize the whole mess, and it's going to become hard and crumbly. It's not going to be good. So this is easy in gas, it's hard in coal or charcoal. So anneal it, normalize it, and then we're going to harden it. So this is hardening. So 1, 2, and 3 hardening cycle. After hardening, there's a 4th cycle, which is your tempering. So tempering, that's when you lose your shit if it cracks. So tempering tempering is where you take it now. So you've basically taken it back to a file state. You can't work with a file, it's too hard, too brittle, and that's why you test your edge with a file, because theoretically your edge now is as hard as a file. That's why it's not going to bite. You need to temper it, and different steels and different smiths have different tempering cycles. I work on 3 180-degree Celsius cycles in the oven. I take it out after every hour. Then I just run it under the cold tap, cool down. So 3 1-hour cycles at 180 degrees. After that, and because this grain structure keeps on refining itself, some of them up until it's sub-zero, I put it in the deep freeze overnight. So anneal it, normalize it, harden it, temper it. You temper at a low temperature until, key indicator here is a golden yellow on the blade. So after hardening, you want to clean the blade with a quick grind before you get it in the oven, so you can check that temperature. You can't check that if there's forging scale or burnt oil on the blade. You need that golden yellow color. Why I say that's key, and you need to check it, is that I know in my oven, if I have it full of blades, it's going to sometimes temper at around 2 hours. So that's rust. So golden yellow is a key indicator of the color. Your oven might do it in 2 hours. Some guys do this in 2 30-degree cycles. I like the 3 1-hour cycles. If it's not golden yellow, just put it back in for another cycle. Keep your eye on it, and then in the water. Any questions so far? So just going to show you this graph quickly. So there's a graph. Okay, so that's temperature. That's carbon content. At 0.7%, plain carbon steel is fully saturated with carbon. So any carbon left over, so like at 1%, is going to attach to other alloys in the steel, and that's where you get your carbon tungsten blades, for example. It's going to attach to the tungsten and make that harder. It's first going to saturate the ferrite, and then it's going to attach to other alloys in the blades. Below 0.7%, it's all going to saturate the ferrite first, and above it's going to attach to other alloys. So these are high-power eutectoid steels, high-power, and these are high-power. Not that you really need to know this, you just need to be aware of it. So high-power and high-power eutectoid steels, 0.7% is a golden medium. So your mild steels are about 1020, 0.2% carbon, and that's at about there. So you can harden mild steel, but it will be at a higher temperature. So that 0.2% carbon is going to fully saturate whatever ferrite's there, but it's not enough to make it a good working edge. So you have to get it hotter before you harden it. So EN45, 0.45% carbon sits there. So those guys who want to work with EN45, you have to heat it up hotter than 5160 down there.
Sorry, Johan is asking, do you cool the blade in water between tempering cycles?
Yes. Yes, just under the tap water, cold water in the tap, in the sink. So cool it down and then back in again.
Gerald wants to know, how long will it take in the forge for the grain to grow big again after reaching austenite stage?
It's if it gets too hot. So if your forge is running at a nice even temperature, then you don't have to stress too much. But it's a good idea not to leave it in there too long. You don't want it to soak. That's why check it with a magnet, and as soon as it gets non-magnetic, I like to leave it a bit longer and then harden it. But don't go and have a cup of tea and come back. So try and do it as soon as possible and do it properly and just harden it. So your 52-100s, so this graph goes there and then it starts going up again. So 52-100s, you need to take up a bit hotter. So that's 635 degrees. Then you're looking at 640. So sorry, I know you can't read this, my handwriting is terrible, but the principle is there. Okay. So 0.7% fully saturated. Above it, you're working with 52-100, you need to get it a bit hotter. 5160, a bit hotter. And that's why you have to know what steel you're working with and play around with them a lot. And just make sure you get it, understand what you're working with. So this is the blade I've prepared for today. And it's one I forged out last week when I was doing another demo. So I've drilled my holes now for my tang, because I might just drop it in the oil and then it's going to be too hard to drill. I've cleaned it up to a 180 grit, and I take it this way on my contact wheel so that my scratches run the length of the blade. Why I do that is to reduce stress rises. I can't get in there with the contact wheel, so I just have to hope that I don't get any cracks from these scratches that run that way. But take it as fine as you want. I just take it rough, lengthwise on the blade, so I don't have any scratches running that away, which can invite stress riser cracks to creep in. Okay, so this blade, I'm going to finish off with these Westbrook scales that I was doing a demonstration on yesterday, hence the shape. This is called a Texas Bowie, by the way. Alright, so I'm going to fire up the forge. I'm going to put it in, handle first. So we first heat up the handle to create... Sorry, that was me. So you guys okay? All fall down. I've run out of beer, have I mentioned that before? So it's not me.
Carlos says whiskey time.
Yes. Alright, so we first heat up the handle to create a heat sink. Because the most vulnerable part of your blade in hardening is that area there, your tip. Very thin, and this one is probably, and I shouldn't be saying this now, but probably a bit too thin for heat treating. But I'm happy to take the chance, because if it's too thin, it's going to warp or crack. But let's see how it goes. So, sorry, I forgot where I was. Right, so if you put it in blade first, your tip is going to be yellow hot before it's even red hot here. So you put it in handle first, you get it orange hot up until your plunge line, then you take it out, you turn it around, and then you get the tip in. Here's also to turn your forge up low, and then you do it slowly. So you're not going to run your forge at forging temperature, you're going to run it at a lower temperature than if you would be forging. Okay, so into the forge. I use these Wolfsville tongs, no, not the box tongs, so I can grab it at the right angle. It's going to go in the forge like that, so that the heat strikes the thickest part of the blade and gets absorbed in there rather than on your thin edge. So the jets, my jets are coming in from this angle, so I'm going to hold it in so the back is touching the jets and as deep in as possible so that the tip doesn't overheat. Alright, so we take it, we get it hot, we're going to test it on our magnet. Boom, we test it, pull, there it's sticking. When it's not sticking, we don't go, okay, not sticking in the oil, we go back to the forge. Because that little interlude there could send it below the austenitic zone again. So we're going to get it hot. Then from there it's going to go straight in the oil. So I'm aiming at quenching it from that notch there till past the tip. So I do 2, so I'm going to take it in that deep, okay, 7 seconds. So in that deep, 7 seconds, that's going to harden it. Out, straight across, straight back in again, another 7 seconds. So that first quench is critical, and you have to key eye on your first quench, because then you put your spirit in the blade. It becomes one with you. So in, yay! And then you pick it up, and then back in again. So after the second 7 seconds, we take it, and we're going to put it straight in the oil. This is the same oil, by the way. So what I'm doing now is I want to cool down the back. So if you harden your edge, cool down your edge. So harden your edge first 7 seconds, cool down your edge second 7 seconds, then you have to cool down the back. If you don't cool down the back properly, that heat in there is going to temper the edge, and you're going to find yourself with a too soft cutting edge. So you have to cool it down. So if you have a spare container with oil, stick it in there until it's no longer simmering or bubbling, and then take it out a bit later. And I'm going to go from there, and then into the cold oil, and that should cool it down sufficiently. Then we test it with a file to see if it's catching or not. So let's fire up the forge and do the same. Fire in the hole. So that's just the oil burning off from that demo, so nothing to worry about. Okay, back to me. Right, so because I'm putting my hands by the forge and you're holding the blade in, which you're not doing when you're normally forging, I'm going to be a sissy and put on gloves. So I put on gloves, I'm putting on my glasses too, just to protect my eyes from the heat and the glare, and to make sure I'm quenching it deep enough. So once again, low and slow is key.
But dry eye.
So I do suffer from something called dry eye, so that's why I have my glasses on. Otherwise you're going to watch my eyeballs shrivel and pop out, which I get from forging. Okay, so I want it nice and orange hot up until my plunge line. I can soak a bit longer. Do a little dance for you. So for those who watched yesterday, I just flattened these Vespa horn scales. I start to do the other one. So he heats it up and squash it between 2 planks. Anybody want to see how that's done? Because I can do the other one quickly. Okay, so I'll show you, but that's coming up to heat. So I'm going to just do the knife and then I'll do the other side of the scale. So, that's my shell knife here. Right, so that's what it looks like before flattening. So I'm going to show you how to flatten that one too. Right, so that blade's looking nice and warm on the handle. So let's turn them around. Grab it from that profile so I can get it into the oil. So as deep in as possible now. I've got 2 burners on this forge, so it's past the second burner. So you can see that shadow in there. We want that shadow gone. And I don't want the tip or the edge to get too hot. So you can actually just let it soak a bit here in front of the forge and just get some heat in from the back. Okay, so back inside now. You watch your colour. So handy tip, just put it in the shade. You can see a bit of shadow there. I want that gone. No shadows. Test it on the magnet. No sticky. Put back in. Okay.
Tony says hello.
Hello Tony, how are you mate? Right, so back out again. So that's nearly there. I just see a bit of shadow in the back, in the middle, and straight from here to the quench. Alright? Okay, so straight into the quench. Yay! 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7. And 7 seconds again.
Why do you move it over to the other side?
The first heat hardens the edge, second heat cools down the edge, and the third quench will cool down the blade. Once it comes out here, you have about 20 seconds to straighten it if it's warped. So let's have a quick look. Straight, and you can always see if it has formed martensite by this whiter grain. You can see there's a distinct difference between that color and that color. Let's go to the side. There's quite a difference between that color steel and this one here, because that's martensite. We put our file on and it's like heaven. That's good, baby. That's good. So that's fully hardened. Straight. If it isn't straight, straight out of the oil, get it in your clamp, in your vise, like so. And I sometimes just put it in, clamp it, let it cool down there, because it's on the intent you want to cool. Especially if you're doing a kitchen knife, it's a bit thinner. So this is about 5 mils thick. Your kitchen knife might be 4 or 3 mils. So straight after hardening, if it hasn't gone skew, put it in a vise and clamp it down nice and tight. So I'm just going to show you quickly how to do that test. That horn rather. Okay, so I'm going to put this here. Let's put it over there. Okay, so what you want to straighten on are 2 nice planks and a vise and heat. So I'll just cut this one down the middle. I've taken off this edge here. If you don't take that off and try and flatten it, it's going to curl in instead of just flattening out. So I'm going to hold it, pinch it there. I'm actually going to get a smaller tongs quickly, hold on. So these ones, I'm going to hold it here in front of the forge. So you can do this with a blowtorch. Some guys boil it in oil just to get it pliable and soft. So it's hair, keratin, and I do it until it's almost blackening on the inside, burning. Outside is what you're going to see. So yeah, so wood. It smells delicious. There, the vase. Clamp it up. My wood is breaking, but that's fine. My thumb is stuck there. Stay. Okay. So let's look at our knife. So that's nicely hardened. The knife goes in the oven for 3 1-hour tempering cycles at 180 until it's a nice golden yellow on the blade. So no cracks, no warps. We're good to go. Let's just have a look at that handle scale quick. I don't think this, you can do it again. It might not be flat enough. If it isn't, just do it again. Because my wood broke. So let's see. That's fine. I can flatten it out a bit more. There, so we just do it again and clamp it again. And then we can just grind it flat and then glue it on a liner and use it that way. So it's going to go there. Knife is still hot. So thanks for watching, guys. Please message me if you have any questions. It's hard to answer any right now, but my door's always open. And is there anything else you guys would like to see? Anything else too quick on? I'll gladly do this again at some stage. Or pop around and come and do it with me. It's fine. Otherwise, I think what I'm going to do, maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday, is how to fit a hidden tang into a block of wood. I have been asked to do a sheet to show the leather work. So as you guys can know and understand, to be a knife maker, my logo is a medieval alchemy symbol for pulverize. You've seen it's very medieval, a lot of alchemy, a lot of pulverizing. So you have to be a metallurgist, you have to be a metal worker, you have to be, it's not an H, it's a medieval alchemy symbol for pulverize. It looks like an H too, and that's why I chose it. So, we're going to cover handle fitting. I also want to do bolster fitting and shaping, particularly on a hidden tang, and then I also do it on a full tang. So I'll cover both in one day maybe. We'll see how that goes in the sheath, and that's it. And any other suggestions from you guys are welcome. So I'm doing this all for free. You can just donate me some beer. That's fine. You can just send me a 6-pack or 2. That's perfect. Guys, have a good one. Be safe, and we'll chat next time.